That night, the massive red bow on the hood of the new BMW looked less like a gift and more like a beautifully tied curse. My sister received a German engineering marvel, while I got an envelope so thin it was embarrassing. Inside were exactly two single-dollar bills, a gentle slap to my dignity. I did not scream. I simply walked out into the snow and, at 2 in the morning, I blocked every single one of them. My name is Chloe Allen, and for the last 14 years, I have existed as a piece of office furniture in the lives of my own family. I was 34 years old, standing in the manicured driveway of my father's sprawling estate in Briar Glen, watching snow fall on a scene that looked like it had been staged for a holiday luxury car commercial. The air was biting, the kind of cold that slips through wool coats and settles into your bones. But the temperature was nothing compared to the absolute zero emanating from the people standing around me. Briar Glen is the sort of town where neighbors judge you by the landscaping crew you hire and the vintage of the wine you serve at casual Tuesday dinners. It is a place of performative happiness, and tonight, the Caldwell family was putting on the performance of a lifetime. I stood slightly off to the side. Naturally, that was my spot. I was the reliable one, the practical one, the one who knew the alarm codes, the one who scheduled the gutter cleaning, the one who reminded my father, Gordon, to take his cholesterol medication, and the one who balanced the household ledgers because my stepmother, Tessa, treated bank accounts like infinite magic wells. I was the logistics manager of their chaotic, glossy lives. I was the person you called when the toilet overflowed, not the person you toasted with champagne. And tonight, the champagne was flowing because my half-sister, Brielle, had just turned 24. The double oak doors of the garage swung open with a theatrical groan. My father stepped out, his face flushed with brandy and pride, gesturing grandly to the driveway where the object of everyone's affection sat idling. It was a brand-new BMW, sleek and black, sitting there like a crouching panther. But the pièce de résistance was the red bow. It was massive, velvety, and tied with a perfection that bordered on aggressive. It sat on the hood of that car like a crown. Brielle shrieked. It was a sound that pierced the winter silence, a high-pitched vibration of pure entitlement. She brought her hands to her mouth, feigning shock, though I knew for a fact she had texted Tessa links to this exact model 3 weeks ago. She ran out into the snow in her heels, not caring about the ice, and threw her arms around Gordon's neck. Tessa was right there, snapping photos with her phone, the flash illuminating the falling snowflakes like strobe lights. Neighbors who had been invited for the spectacle clapped. It was nauseatingly perfect. I clapped too. My hands were gloved, so the sound was muffled, dull. I watched Brielle slide into the driver's seat, inhaling the smell of new leather. She revved the engine, and the aggressive purr of the machine seemed to say, "I deserve this." Then, the attention shifted. The performance had a second act. Gordon cleared his throat, holding up a hand to quiet the small crowd. He turned his eyes toward me. There was a glint in them that I had seen before, usually right before he critiqued my choice of career or my lack of a husband. "And for Chloe," he announced, his voice booming with a jovial generosity that didn't reach his eyes. "We didn't forget you, sweetheart. We know you are the practical one, the grounded one." Tessa stepped forward, a tight smile plastered on her face, and handed me an envelope. It was white, standard business size, and terrifyingly thin. It felt weightless in my hand. For a split second, a foolish, hopeful part of my brain thought it might be a check. Maybe they were finally acknowledging the thousands of hours of unpaid labor I had poured into keeping their lives afloat. Maybe it was a down payment on an apartment so I could finally move out of the guest cottage I had been guilted into staying in to be close to family. I tore the flap open. There was no check. There was no gift card. Inside the envelope were 2 crisp, green bills, $2. I stared at George Washington's face. I blinked, thinking I had missed something, that perhaps there was a hidden compartment in the paper. But no, it was just 2 single-dollar bills. "We wanted to give you something symbolic," Gordon said, his voice dropping to a register that sounded like he was imparting great wisdom. Brielle needs a little help getting started. But you, Chloe, you are steady. But sometimes, we feel you take the support we give you for granted. This is to remind you of the value of $1. You have to earn your way in this world. Chloe, nothing is free. The silence that followed was deafening. The neighbors shifted uncomfortably. Even the engine of the BMW seemed to idle quieter. The humiliation was not an accident. It was the main event. They had bought a $60,000 car for the daughter who had dropped out of 3 different colleges, and they gave $2 to the daughter who managed their tax returns. It was a calculated strike. It was a reminder of hierarchy. I looked up. I did not scream. I did not cry. My face remained a mask of calm, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Brielle climbed out of her new car. She walked over to me, her breath puffing white in the frigid air. She smelled of expensive vanilla perfume and success she hadn't earned. She leaned in close, invading my personal space, her voice dropping to a whisper that only I could hear. It was sweet, sugary, and laced with absolute venom. "If you're so smart, why don't you just leave?" she whispered, her eyes dancing with malice. "But we both know you won't. You wouldn't last 1 week without us. You're nothing without this family. Chloe, you're just the help." That was the moment. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the car. It was the certainty in her voice. She truly believed I was a parasite, when in reality, I was the host. They had fed on my competence for so long they had convinced themselves it was their own. I looked at Brielle. I looked at Gordon, who was waiting for me to say thank you for the lesson. I looked at Tessa, who was checking her reflection in the BMW side mirror. I reached into my pocket. My fingers brushed against the cold metal of my keyring. There were 2 keys on it that mattered right now. One was the key to the main house and the guest cottage, the symbol of my access to their world. The other was a small, tarnished brass key that didn't look like much of anything. It was a key I had never used, a key to a life I had been too afraid to examine. I walked over to the buffet table that had been set up on the heated patio. The tablecloth was white linen, crisp and spotless. I placed the envelope with the $2 on the table. Beside it, I placed my keyring. The sound was small, a soft clack of metal on wood, but to me, it sounded like a gunshot. It sounded like the cracking of a foundation. "Chloe?" Tessa asked, her voice sharp. "What are you doing? Don't be dramatic." I didn't answer. I didn't look at them. I turned around and began to walk down the driveway. "Chloe?" Gordon barked. "You walk away now, and don't you dare think about coming back until you apologize for this attitude. You are being ungrateful." I kept walking. The snow crunched under my boots. I was wearing a wool coat, jeans, and a sweater. I had no suitcase. I had no toiletries. I had my phone, my wallet, and deep in the inside pocket of my coat, a sealed letter. My mother, Marianne, had given it to me 2 weeks before she died, 14 months ago. She had gripped my hand with a strength that surprised me and made me promise, "When you leave, Chloe, not if, when you truly walk away, open this." I had carried it like a talisman, too afraid to open it because opening it meant admitting that I had to leave. Now, as I reached the end of the driveway and stepped onto the public road, the wind hit me full force. It was freezing, a physical assault on my skin. But strangely, it felt clean. It felt real. The air in that house had been recycled poison. This was just winter. I walked for what felt like miles, though it was likely only 2. I made it to the 24-hour diner on the edge of town, a place called the Night Owl. The neon sign buzzed with a rhythmic, dying flicker. I slid into a booth in the back, my body shaking violently as the adrenaline began to crash into the hypothermia. I ordered black coffee. My hands trembled as I held the mug, the heat seeping into my frozen palms. I pulled my phone out. It was 1:48 in the morning. The screen was lit up with notifications. They were coming in waves. A digital bombardment. Missed call from Dad 4. Missed call from Tessa 2. Text from Brielle. "You are creating such a scene. Mom is crying. Come back and fix this." Text from Dad. This is childish. Chloe, pick up the phone. You have bills to explain to me. Text from Tessa. We are all very disappointed. We try to teach you a lesson and you throw a tantrum. I watch the messages roll in. They weren't worried about my safety. They weren't asking if I was cold. They were annoyed that the logistics manager had walked off the job. They were angry that the audience had left the theater before the applause. I stared at the time, 1:55 in the morning. I took a sip of the coffee. It was bitter and burnt, and it was the best thing I had ever tasted. I opened the contact for Gordon. I scrolled down to the bottom. My thumb hovered over the red text. Block this caller. I pressed it. I did the same for Tessa. Then I opened Brielle's chat. Her last message was a picture of her in the driver's seat of the BMW, with a sad face emoji, captioned, "Don't ruin my night." I didn't reply. I didn't type out a justification. I didn't tell them where I was. I pressed block. The digital clock on my phone screen flipped. 2 o'clock in the morning. The buzzing stopped. The phone went silent. It was as if a heavy steel door had slammed shut, sealing me off from the noise, the demands, the gaslighting, and the suffocating expectations. I sat there in the silence of the diner, the smell of grease and old coffee in the air. I was homeless. I had almost no cash on me. I had just severed ties with the only family I had known, and for the first time in 34 years, I took a breath that was entirely my own. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the letter from my mother. The envelope was worn at the edges from being carried for so long. The handwriting on the front was familiar, looping and elegant. Chloe, for the day you choose yourself. I wasn't running away. I realized I thought I was escaping, fleeing into the night like a wounded animal. But as I stared at my mother's handwriting, a strange sensation settled in my gut. It wasn't fear anymore. It was anticipation. I didn't know it yet. Sitting there in that booth at 2 o'clock in the morning, but I had just activated a sequence of events that my mother had been engineering for years. I thought I had just blocked them on my phone. I had no idea that I had just initiated a protocol that would dismantle their entire world. The sun would rise in a few hours, and when it did, the Caldwells would wake up to find that the BMW in the driveway was just a piece of metal, but the daughter they had driven away was the key to everything they owned. They thought the red bow was a gift. They were about to learn that it was the most expensive mistake of their lives. I slid my thumb under the seal of my mother's letter. It was time to see what she had left me. It was time to see what the small brass key opened. My life as the logistics manager was over. My life as Chloe Allen, the woman who owned her own name, was just beginning. The fluorescent lights of the night owl hummed with a low electric buzz that seemed to drill directly into my temples. I sat there, staring at the Formica tabletop, watching a small bead of condensation slide down the side of my water glass. My hands were resting on the table, and they were shaking. I pressed my palms flat against the cold surface, trying to steady them, but the tremors refused to stop. It was a strange sensation because I knew, with absolute clinical certainty, that I was not afraid. Fear has a specific taste, like copper and bile. This was not fear. This was the physiological reaction to a sudden, violent decompression. For 34 years, I had been holding my breath, keeping my muscles tense, bracing for an impact that happened every single day. Now, for the first time, I had exhaled. My body was simply vibrating with the sheer shock of relief. I looked around the diner. It was nearly empty, save for a long-haul trucker nursing a slice of pie 3 booths down, and a waitress who looked like she had seen every tragedy this town had to offer. It was quiet. That was the most jarring part. The silence. For as long as I could remember, my life had been a cacophony of demands. Chloe, where's the insurance policy? Chloe, did you call the landscaper? Chloe, Brielle needs money transferred to her account because she forgot her PIN again. I was not a daughter. I was not a sister. I was an unpaid employee. I was the chief operating officer of a corporation called the Caldwell family, and I had been fired for the crime of competency, or perhaps I had quit. The distinction felt blurry, but the result was the same. I was out. I took a sip of water. The cold liquid hit my stomach and woke me up a little more. My mind began to drift, pulling me back not to the house I had just left, but to a time 14 months ago. My mother, Mary Ann, had been a quiet woman, in a room full of loud people like my father and stepmother. You could almost miss her. She moved softly, spoke rarely, and seemed to blend into the wallpaper. But that was a mistake people made. They confused silence with weakness. I had made that mistake too. Until the end. I remembered sitting by her bedside in the final weeks, the hospice equipment humming in the corner. Her eyes, usually so gentle, had taken on a clarity that was almost frightening. She had grabbed my wrist one afternoon. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her fingers digging into my skin. "In this house, Chloe, you are the pillar," she had said, her voice rasping but steady. "You hold the roof up. You keep the walls from caving in on them. But you need to remember something very important. A pillar has the right to stand where it wants. If you move, the roof comes down. That is not your fault. That is gravity." At the time, I thought it was just the medication talking, or perhaps a mother's attempt to make her quiet, dutiful daughter feel important. But now, sitting in this booth at 2 a.m, another memory surfaced, one that had seemed insignificant at the time, but now felt like a puzzle piece clicking into place. It was about 3 years ago. We were in the kitchen. Mom had a stack of papers on the counter. She was organizing files, something she rarely did because my father insisted he handled the big picture finances. She had called me over. "Chloe, honey, I need you to sign a few things for me," she had said casually, sliding a pen into my hand. "Your father is moving some assets around for tax purposes, and since you handle the day-to-day bills, it is just easier if your name is on the administrative side. Just procedural. You know how the banks are. I hadn't even read them. I trusted her. I trusted that she was just trying to make my life easier, or perhaps trying to give me some semblance of authority in a house where I had none." I signed my name, again and again, Chloe Allen, Chloe Allen. I must have signed 10 different documents that afternoon. She had watched me with a strange intensity, and when I was done, she didn't say thank you, she just nodded, took the folder, and locked it in her personal drawer. "Good," she had whispered. "That is good." I shook my head, clearing the memory. What had I signed? I had no idea. I had always assumed they were just permissions to pay the electric bill or talk to the insurance adjusters. But looking back, the secrecy felt heavy. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. The screen was black. I had blocked them all. But before the block, before I had severed the digital limb, one message had slipped through the barrage of insults from my father and Brielle. I had ignored it in the heat of the moment, my thumb hovering over the block button, but my brain had registered it. I unlocked the phone and went to my unknown messages. There it was, received at 1:46 in the morning, just minutes before I walked out. Sender LG. Message: "If you need a safe place, text me. I am awake. LG." The initials triggered a sensory memory, the smell of old paper and expensive mahogany. Lena Graves. She was my mother's attorney. I had only met her twice. The first time was briefly when Mom was sick, and the second time was at the reading of the will. Lena was a woman of few words, sharp features, and suits that looked like armor. At the will reading, after my father had performed his grief for the audience and Tessa had asked about the life insurance payout, Lena had shaken my hand. She had held it for a beat too long, her eyes locking onto mine with a piercing, silent communication I hadn't understood. "I am here," that look had said. "I am waiting." Why would she text me now? How did she know I didn't text her back? Not yet. I didn't want to drag anyone else into the blast radius of my imploding life until I understood what was happening. I paid for my coffee with the loose change in my pocket. I wasn't going to touch the $2. Those 2 bills were still in the envelope, burning a hole in my pocket. I would never spend them. They were a monument. I needed sleep. I couldn't go back to the house to get my car. That would be a surrender. I couldn't stay in Briar Glen. Someone would see me, and by noon, the gossip mill would be churning out stories about how unstable Chloe had finally snapped. I needed anonymity. I walked 3 miles to the highway interchange. There was a motel there. The kind of place that rented rooms by the hour to people who didn't want to be found. It was called the Traveler's Inn. The sign claimed it had color television and air conditioning. Boasting of amenities from 1980, I paid cash for a single room. The night clerk, a man with grease stains on his shirt and zero interest in humanity, didn't even ask for ID. The room smelled of stale cigarette smoke and lemon disinfectant. I locked the door, engaged the deadbolt, and propped a chair under the handle. Old habits from living in a house where privacy was a suggestion, not a right. I didn't undress. I took off my boots, curled up on top of the scratchy bedspread in my jeans and sweater, and stared at the ceiling. I drifted into a restless sleep, haunted by the image of a red bow tightening around my neck like a noose. When I woke, the sun was slicing through the thin curtains, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. My neck was stiff. My mouth tasted like cotton. For a split second, I forgot where I was. I reached out to check the time on the bedside table, expecting my mahogany nightstand, and my hand hit cheap plastic. Reality crashed back in. I was homeless. I was estranged. I sat up and grabbed my phone. It was 9 a.m. I had slept for 5 hours. There were no new notifications from my family. Obviously, they were blocked. But there was a notification from an app I rarely paid attention to, my secondary email client, the one I used for all the household accounts. Subject security alert. Briar Glen Utilities. Body multiple failed login attempts detected. Access to the primary account has been temporarily suspended due to suspicious activity. I stared at the screen. A cold, grim smile touched my lips. They had woken up. They had realized the heat was turned down, or the internet was out. Or perhaps Tessa had tried to pay a bill online to prove a point. They had tried to log in, but they couldn't. They couldn't because for 10 years, I had been the one setting the passwords. I had been the one managing the two-factor authentication. The codes didn't go to my father's phone. They went to mine. They were trying to get into the system, and the system was locking them out. My father, a man who prided himself on ownership, was currently a guest in his own infrastructure. He owned the house, sure, but he didn't own the mechanism that made it run. He didn't know the password to the security gate. He didn't know the login for the automatic sprinkler system. He didn't even know the PIN code for the smart fridge. I was the admin. I swung my legs off the bed. The panic I had expected to feel was absent. Instead, I felt a strange, mechanical clarity. I reached for my coat and pulled out the sealed letter from my mother. The paper felt heavy, dense with secrets. When you leave, really, open this. I ran my thumb over the seal. I wanted to tear it open. I wanted to know what she had to say. But something stopped me. A feeling in my gut, an intuition that felt like her hand on my shoulder, whispered, "Not yet. You are not ready for the answer until you ask the right question." She was pacing me, even from the grave. Marianne was managing the timeline. She knew that if I opened it too soon, I might be overwhelmed. I needed to be steady. I put the letter back in my pocket. I picked up the small brass key that I had taken from my keyring, the one that didn't fit any door in the main house. I looked at it closely. It was old, cut for a pin tumbler lock, the kind you find on antique desks or off-grid cabins. I knew what I had to do. I unlocked my phone and opened the messaging app. I typed in the number for LG. "I am out. I am safe. I need to see you." I hit send. 3 seconds later, the reply came. "Come to the office. The back entrance. Do not park near the building. I have the file ready." The file. Not a file. The file. I stood up and put my boots on. I splashed cold water on my face in the tiny, stained sink. I looked at myself in the mirror. My hair was messy. My eyes were tired, and I looked like I had slept in my clothes because I had. But the woman staring back at me wasn't the logistical ghost of the Caldwell Manor anymore. She was real. She was solid, and she was about to go to war. I left the motel key on the dresser and walked out into the cold morning air. The sun was bright, reflecting off the snow, blinding and sharp. I didn't have a car, so I started walking toward the downtown district where Lena Graves had her office. It was a 5-mile walk. I didn't care. Every step took me further away from the BMW and the red bow. Every step took me closer to understanding why my mother had left me a key, a letter, and a lawyer who was waiting for me like a sleeper agent. They wanted me to learn the value of a dollar fine. I was about to teach them the cost of everything else. The office of Graves Associates was not located in one of the gleaming glass towers that pierced the skyline of the financial district. Instead, it was tucked away in a brownstone on a quiet, tree-lined street that smelled of damp brick and old money. I walked up the stone steps, my boots leaving wet prints on the slate, and pushed open the heavy oak door. The transition was immediate. The noise of the street, the distant sirens, the slush of tires on wet pavement vanished, replaced by a profound, library-like silence. The air inside was warm and smelled of lemon polish, leather, and the distinct dry scent of aging paper. It was the smell of secrets being kept. The receptionist, a woman with silver hair pulled back into a severe bun, did not ask for my name. She simply looked up over her spectacles, nodded once as if confirming a shipment had arrived on schedule, and pointed toward the double doors at the end of the hall. I walked down the corridor. The floorboards creaked beneath the carpet, a sound that felt appropriate for the weight of what I was carrying. My hand was in my pocket. Clutching the brass key and the unopened letter, I knocked once. "Enter," a voice came from within. It wasn't a shout. It was a command stated at a conversational volume, with the expectation of obedience. I opened the door. Lena Graves was standing by the window, looking out at the snowy courtyard. She turned as I entered. She was exactly as I remembered her from the reading of the will, sharp, angular, and dressed in a charcoal suit that looked like it had been tailored to deflect bullets. She didn't smile. She didn't offer me coffee. She didn't ask me if I had slept, or if I was cold, or if I was okay. She walked behind her massive mahogany desk and gestured to the leather chair opposite her. "Are you ready?" she asked. The question hung in the air. Not "how are you?" but "are you ready?" It implied that what was about to happen was not a conversation, but a procedure, a surgery. I sat down. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice sounding rough to my own ears. "I blocked them, all of them, at 2 this morning." Lena nodded, as if I had just confirmed a weather report. "Good. That was the trigger condition." "Trigger condition?" I asked. Lena reached under her desk and pulled out a thick folder. It wasn't a standard manila file. It was black, heavy cardstock, tied shut with a thick black ribbon. It looked less like legal documentation and more like a death warrant. She placed it in the center of the desk, between us. "Your mother, Marianne, was a very intelligent woman. Chloe, she knew people. Specifically, she knew your father, and she knew your stepmother, and she knew you." Lena rested her hands on top of the folder. She knew that if she simply left you her assets in a standard will, Gordon would bully you into signing them over. She knew that if she gave you control while you were still living under their roof, acting as their servant, guilt would eat you alive. You would have given it all back to them just to keep the peace. I felt a flush of shame creep up my neck because she was right. If I had inherited a fortune a year ago, Gordon would have convinced me it was for the family to pool it, and I would have signed. "So," Lena continued, her eyes locking onto mine, "she created a trust with a specific activation clause. This is not just a will. Chloe, this is a protection plan. The assets within this portfolio only transfer to your control, and the existence of the portfolio is only revealed upon the event of you voluntarily severing communication with Gordon and Tessa and removing yourself from the primary residence for a period of no less than 6 hours." My mouth went dry. "She knew I would leave." "She hoped you would," Lena corrected. "She bet on your survival instinct. She told me, one day, they will push her too far. And when that day comes, I want to be the one to catch her." Lena untied the black ribbon. The knot came undone with a soft rustle. She opened the folder. Inside was a stack of documents, dense with legal jargon, stamped with official seals. Lena turned the file around and slid it toward me. "We need to review your holdings. I looked down at the first document. It was a property deed. I squinted at the address. 1412 Briarwood Lane. My heart stopped. That's the house, I stammered. That's Dad's house. It is the house where your father resides. Lena said precisely. But it is not your father's house. The title was held in your mother's name since before their marriage, a family inheritance, she never commingled. When she passed, the title transferred to the Marianne Allen Trust. As of 2 this morning, when you engaged the protocol, you became the sole trustee. I stared at the paper, the house where I had been treated like a maid, the house where I had been told to leave just hours ago. I owned it. I could legally evict them. Lena flipped the page. The vacation property in Cinder Ridge, she said. The cabin, yours, full ownership. She flipped another page. The investment portfolio managed by Vanguard, yours, another page. The liquidity fund for household maintenance, yours. My head was spinning. But Dad talks about his investments all the time. He talks about the market. He moves money around. Your father plays with the dividends of a trust he does not control, Lena said, her voice cutting through my confusion. Your mother set it up so that he had a stipend, a generous one, to keep his ego fed. He thought he was managing the capital. In reality, he was just playing in a sandbox she built for him. But the authorization for the core assets, the power to leverage the properties that required a signature from the primary beneficiary. I remembered the kitchen, the stack of papers, just procedural. Chloe, just for the files. She made me sign them, I whispered. 3 years ago, she made me sign transfer documents. She was moving the pieces into place while she still had the strength, Lena confirmed. She was building a fortress around you, brick by brick, so that when they finally threw you out into the cold, you would land in a castle. I felt tears pricking my eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization of her love. It was a ferocious, calculating love. She hadn't just baked cookies, she had weaponized the probate court. There is a letter, Lena said softly. She instructed me to tell you to read it now. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope I had carried through the snow. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. The note inside was short. It was written on her personal stationery, the paper thick and cream-colored. My dearest Chloe, if you are reading this, it means you finally chose yourself. I am so proud of you. I know you feel guilty. I know you are wondering if you are being cruel. Stop it. You are not abandoning them. You are simply resigning from a job you never applied for. Do not go back. Do not become their crutch again. A crutch that is never used eventually rots. But a crutch that is used forever prevents the patient from ever learning to walk. Take the keys. Take the accounts. They are yours. They always were. Love, Mom. I let out a breath that sounded like a sob. Resigning from a job you never applied for. That was exactly what it was. Suddenly, the silence of the office was shattered. The phone on Lena's desk rang. It was a harsh, jarring sound. Lena didn't jump. She looked at the caller ID, and a small, icy smile touched her lips. Right on schedule, she murmured. She pressed the speakerphone button. Graves, she answered. Miss Graves, this is Mr. Henderson from First National Bank. A nervous male voice filled the room. I have a situation here. Gordon Caldwell is in my office. He's attempting to authorize a transfer from the primary holding account, but the system is flagging it. It says the user credentials have been revoked. I froze. I could hear my father's muffled shouting in the background of the call. He sounded frantic. The system is correct. Mr. Henderson, Lena said, her voice cool and professional. Mr. Caldwell does not have authorization to access those funds. But he says he is the account holder, the banker stammered. He is threatening to sue the bank. Let him threaten, Lena said. Check the signatory card. Mr. Henderson, who is the primary trustee? There was a pause, the sound of typing. Then, a sharp intake of breath from the banker. Chloe Allen, he read. It updated this morning. The account is locked to everyone except Ms. Allen. Precisely, Lena said. If Mr. Caldwell continues to cause a disturbance, please remind him that attempting to access a trust account without authorization is a federal crime. Have a good day." She disconnected the call. The silence rushed back in, but the energy in the room had changed. It wasn't just quiet anymore. It was electric. "He is at the bank," I said, the realization washing over me. He isn't looking for me because he is worried. He is looking for me because his debit card didn't work. "They are not panicking because they lost a daughter." "Chloe," Lena said, leaning forward, her eyes hard. "They are panicking because they have lost their admin rights. They have lost control of the system." I thought about the BMW, the red bow, the $2. It had all been a show, a performance of wealth and generosity. But if the house was mine, and the money was mine, what did they actually have, the BMW? I said aloud. How did they pay for the BMW if the accounts are locked? Lena's expression darkened. This was the shift I hadn't expected. The look on her face wasn't satisfaction anymore. It was concern. "That brings us to the second reason your mother built this fortress," Lena said. She opened a drawer and pulled out a single, thin file. She didn't hand it to me. She held it. "Chloe, your mother was dying for a long time. She was bedridden. She couldn't check the mail. She couldn't go to the bank. During that time, she suspected things, small things. Missing statements, notifications of credit inquiries she didn't initiate." My stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that the BMW with the red bow wasn't a gift paid for by your father's hard work," Lena said, her voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than a scream. "We believe the financing for that car and several other loans was secured using your credit profile, or rather, a profile that looks like yours, signed by a hand that was trying very hard to be yours." I felt the blood drain from my face. Identity theft. My own father. "Identity theft is a strong word," Lena said, though her tone suggested it was the exact right word. "Let's call it unauthorized leveraging of a family member's assets. Your mother suspected Gordon and Brielle were forging signatures to keep their lifestyle afloat while her health declined. That is why she locked everything down. She wasn't just protecting the money from their greed. Chloe, she was protecting you from their crimes." I sat back in the chair, the leather creaking. The room felt suddenly cold again. The sentimental journey of opening my mother's letter had ended, and a cold, hard reality had taken its place. The $2 wasn't a lesson, it was a distraction. They gave me $2 to make me feel small, so I wouldn't look up and see that they had stolen my name to buy a $60,000 car. "What do we do?" I asked. My voice was steady now. The sadness was gone, incinerated by a white-hot spark of fury. Lena Graves closed the black folder and rested her hand on it. "We don't do anything yet," she said. "We let them realize the walls are closing in. We let them understand that the person they kicked out holds the only key to the door, and while they are banging on the gates, we gather the evidence." She pushed the single, thin file toward me. "This is the initial forensic report on the signatures," she said. "Read it. And then, we are going to prepare for a war." I took the file. The world outside the window was bright and snowy, a perfect winter day in Briar Glen. But in here, inside the fortress my mother had built, the war had just begun, and for the first time in my life, I had the high ground. The phone on Lena's desk did not ring this time. Instead, it was my own cell phone that vibrated against the mahogany surface, dancing aggressively near the edge. I looked down at the screen. It was not a blocked number, nor was it a contact I recognized. It was a toll-free number with an area code that originated from a banking center in Delaware. I looked at Lena. She gave a sharp nod, indicating I should answer. "This is Chloe," I said, my voice tight. "Good afternoon, Ms. Allen. This is Marcus from the Fraud Prevention Department at Sovereign Auto Finance. I am calling to verify some details regarding the vehicle purchase agreement authorized yesterday evening. We have flagged a discrepancy in the employment verification section." The room seemed to tilt on its axis. "I'm sorry," I said, gripping the phone tighter. What purchase agreement? The agreement for the 2024 BMW X5, Marcus replied, his tone shifting from polite to professional alertness. The loan in the amount of $72,000, co-signed by you for a Ms. Brielle Caldwell. I felt the blood drain from my face, pooling somewhere in my feet. I looked at Lena, mouthing the word BMW. I didn't buy a BMW, I said into the phone, and I certainly didn't co-sign a loan for $72,000. There was a pause on the other end, the sound of keys clacking rapidly. Ms. Allen, I have the electronic DocuSign packet here, as well as a scanned upload of a physical signature page for the primary liability clause. It lists you as the guarantor. The down payment of $8,000 was drafted from a joint checking account ending in 4429. I knew that account number. It was an old account, one my father had opened for me when I was in college for emergencies, an account I hadn't used in 6 years. I thought it had a balance of maybe $50. That account doesn't have $8,000 in it, I whispered. It does now, Marcus said. Or it did yesterday. A transfer was made into it from a home equity line of credit, and then immediately wired out to the dealership, and the signature matches the one we have on file for your credit report. Lena held out her hand. I passed her the phone. This is Lena Graves, legal counsel for Ms. Allen, she said, her voice dropping into that terrifyingly calm register she used when she was about to destroy someone. You are recording this call, correct? Good. Mark this file as disputed immediately. My client did not authorize this transaction. We require a copy of the executed contract and the IP address log for the digital signature sent to my office within the hour. If you disperse those funds to the dealership, Sovereign Auto will be named as a co-defendant in a suit for aiding and abetting identity theft. She hung up before Marcus could stutter a reply. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence in the office was heavy, suffocating. The revelation was settling over me like ash. They bought it in my name, I said, the words tasting like poison. The red bow, the party, the cheering neighbors. Brielle didn't get a car. She got a set of keys. I got the debt. They needed a credit score, Lena said, her fingers flying across her keyboard. Your father's credit is likely leveraged to the hilt to maintain that house and his image. Brielle has no income history. You, however you are the pillar, perfect credit, zero debt, reliable Chloe. A beep from the printer in the corner announced the arrival of the faxed documents. Lena stood up and retrieved them, laying the pages out on the desk like an autopsy report. Look, she commanded. I leaned over. There it was, in black and white. Borrower Brielle Caldwell, co-borrower, guarantor, Chloe Allen, and there, at the bottom of the page, was my signature. I stared at it. It was my name. It was my loop on the C, my sharp cross on the A. It looked exactly like the way I signed checks, birthday cards, and legal forms. It was perfect. Too perfect. It looks real, I whispered, a fresh wave of nausea hitting me. Lena, if they show this to a judge, it looks real. Look closer, Lena said, handing me a magnifying glass from her drawer. Look at the end of the N in Allen. I peered through the glass, magnified. The ink revealed its secrets. At the very end of the signature, where the pen should have lifted off the paper in a swift, fluid motion, there was a tiny, microscopic pool of ink, a hesitation mark. The person who signed this paused, Lena explained. They hesitated for a fraction of a second before lifting the pen. That is not how you sign your own name. Chloe, muscle memory is fluid. Forgery is calculated. Someone traced this. The memory hit me with the force of a physical blow. 3 months ago, the dining room table. I was working on my laptop, paying the utility bills. Brielle had come in, looking flustered, holding a stack of travel brochures. Chloe, my printer is jammed, and I need to print these tickets for my trip to Cabo. Can I just use your computer for a second? I had moved over. I had let her sit at my machine. I had watched her insert a USB drive. She hadn't just been printing tickets. She had been scanning. My desktop had a folder labeled Scan Docs My Lease, My Tax Returns, My Passport. She had been sitting there, extracting my identity while I went to the kitchen to get her a glass of iced tea. And then, another memory. 2 weeks ago, the hallway, my father, rushing out the door, his coat half on. He had thrust a piece of paper at me, folded so that only the signature line was visible. "Chloe, quick, the insurance adjuster is here, and I forgot to sign the update for the guest cottage roof. Just put your name here. You're the resident. It needs a tenant signature. Hurry. He's waiting in the driveway." I had signed it. I hadn't unfolded the paper. I had signed it against the wall, in a rush, desperate to be helpful, desperate to be the good daughter. "He tricked me," I said, my voice trembling. "He made me sign a blank page. Or he transferred that signature onto this document, and Brielle, she stole my digital files." "It is not just a toxic family dynamic anymore," Lena said, her eyes cold and hard. "This is a felony. This is bank fraud, wire fraud, identity theft." I looked at the document again. The gift. The sheer malice of it took my breath away. They hadn't just decided to give Brielle a car while giving me nothing. That would have been cruel. But legal, no. They had decided that I would pay for the instrument of my own humiliation. They wanted me to stand in the snow, watching my sister rev the engine of a car that was actively destroying my credit score, and they wanted me to applaud. It was a trap. The BMW was a $60,000 shackle intended to keep me tethered to them for the next 6 years. If I left, if I stopped working, if I stopped being their financial pillar, the payments would stop, and my name would be ruined. They thought they had checkmated me. They didn't think I would leave, I realized. They thought I would stay, and eventually, when the first payment notice came, they would gaslight me. They would say, "Oh, we just used your name for the rate. We will pay it. Don't worry." But they wouldn't pay it. I would... "Precisely," Lena said. "They bet on your compliance. They bet on your silence." She reached for the black folder again, the one my mother had left. "Now we look at the rest," she said. "If they did this for a car, Chloe, we have to assume they have done it for everything." We spent the next hour dissecting the anatomy of my life. We pulled credit reports from all 3 bureaus. The damage was extensive, a sprawling web of deceit. There was a credit card opened 4 years ago in my name with a balance of $12,000 maxed out on designer clothes and spa treatments. The billing address was a PSO box in a neighboring town I didn't know existed. There was a personal loan taken out last Christmas for $5,000. And the down payment for the BMW, the $8,000 from the joint account. Lena traced the source of the funds. It came from a home equity line of credit on the main house. "Wait," I said, tracing the line on the statement. "If the house is in the trust, and I am the trustee, how did he tap into the equity?" Lena smiled, a razor-thin expression. "He didn't. He tried to. But remember, the trust activates upon your departure. But before that, your mother had a freeze on the equity. He must have forged a release form weeks ago to get that cash, anticipating the car purchase. So he stole from the house I own to pay for the car I bought for the sister who hates me." I summarized. "Correct." My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text message. The number was unfamiliar, but the tone was unmistakable. I opened it. Sender unknown message. "You are overreacting. Seriously. Chloe, stop being dramatic. Mom is hysterical. Just call the bank and tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you gave verbal permission. If you don't fix this, you're ruining my birthday. Don't be a jealous bitch." It was Brielle. She must have borrowed a friend's phone since I had blocked hers. I read the words misunderstanding and verbal permission. She wasn't scared. That was the most insulting part. She genuinely believed that this was a minor inconvenience, a clerical error that I was morally obligated to correct. She thought that if she exerted enough pressure, if she called me enough names, I would fold. I would pick up the phone, call the bank, and lie to federal regulators to save her from the consequences of her own greed. I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound that startled me. "She wants me to call the bank," I told Lena. "She says I'm ruining her birthday." She is about to learn that birthdays are not legal defenses, Lena said. Do not reply. I won't, I said. I looked at the text one last time. Don't be a jealous bitch. I wasn't jealous. I was done. I placed the phone face down on the desk. Lena, I said, my voice steady. I want to audit everything. I want the tax returns from the last 7 years. I want the insurance policies. I want to know every single time Gordon Caldwell used the name Chloe Allen to buy himself a life he couldn't afford. It will take time, Lena warned, and it will get ugly. Once we report this as fraud, the police will be involved. Brielle could face charges. Your father could face charges. I looked at the forged signature on the BMW loan. I looked at the hesitation mark where the pen had paused a moment of doubt, perhaps, or just a steadying of the hand before committing the crime. They hadn't hesitated to humiliate me. They hadn't hesitated to hand me $2 while they laughed. They didn't give me a choice, I said. They gave me a debt. Now I'm calling it in. I picked up the file labeled Cinder Ridge. The cabin, I said. You mentioned the cabin in Cinder Ridge is fully mine. Yes, Lena said. Why? Because that's where Mom kept her old journals, I said, a memory surfacing through the fog of betrayal. She used to write in the study there. If she knew about this, if she suspected it, she would have written it down. Lena nodded slowly. Evidence of intent. That would be powerful. I'm going there, I said. I need to see what else they've been hiding. Be careful, Chloe, Lena said. When you poke a cornered animal, it bites. But when you take away a narcissist's money, they don't just bite. They hunt. Let them come, I said, standing up and grabbing the keys to the rental car Lena had arranged for me. I have the deed, and I'm done paying for their gas. The drive to Cinder Ridge took 2 hours, winding through mountain roads that grew progressively narrower and wider as I ascended. By the time I reached the turnoff, the rental car, a nondescript gray sedan that Lena had procured for me, was fighting for traction against the fresh powder. This place was only 60 miles from the manicured lawns of Briar Glen, but it felt like a different planet. It was a place of silence, heavy pines, an air so thin and cold it felt like inhaling broken glass. My mother had loved this cabin. She called it her breathing room. It was a modest A-frame structure made of cedar that had grayed with age, sitting on a ridge that overlooked a valley of nothing but trees. My father hated it. He called it a money pit and a rotten pile of lumber. He had tried to sell it 6 times, but the title had been locked in the trust even back then, one of the few things Mom had refused to yield on. Now I knew why. It wasn't just a vacation home, it was a vault. I parked the car at the bottom of the steep driveway and walked the rest of the way up. The snow here was knee-deep, undisturbed by footprints or tire tracks. The house looked dormant, its windows dark eyes staring out at the winter landscape. I reached the front door. My hand went to my pocket, retrieving the key ring. The main key turned with a stiff, reluctant grinding sound. I pushed the door open. The air inside was colder than the air outside. It was a stillness that had been settling for months. It smelled of wood smoke, old pine needles, and faintly, just faintly, of the lavender hand cream my mother used to wear. That scent hit me harder than the cold. It was the ghost of her presence, suspended in the freezing air. I didn't turn on the lights. The afternoon sun was slanting through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long, pale rectangles on the dust-covered floorboards. I walked straight to the back room, the small study that jutted out over the ravine. This was where Mom used to sit for hours, claiming she was watching the birds, while my father paced in the living room complaining about the lack of cell service. The study was exactly as she had left it, a heavy oak desk, a leather chair that was cracked with age, and a wall of built-in cabinets. I pulled out the small brass key, the one I had carried away from the party, the one that had been on my keyring for years without a purpose. I looked at the cabinet in the corner. It was a sturdy piece of furniture, handmade, with a simple keyhole. I inserted the key. It slid in like it was coming home. I turned it. Click. The door swung open. Inside, there was no clutter. There was just a single wooden box, about the size of a shoebox, but made of dark, polished walnut. It was tied shut with a piece of rough, fibrous twine, knotted tightly. It looked primitive, almost ritualistic. I lifted the box out. It was heavy. I carried it to the desk and sat down in her chair. The leather creaked, a sound I had heard 1,000 times in my childhood. I untied the knot. My fingers were numb from the cold, making me clumsy. But finally, the twine fell away. I opened the lid. I had expected sentimentality. I had expected photos of me as a baby, or perhaps letters she never sent. What I found was an arsenal. On top lay a series of envelopes, each one labeled with a month and a year in Mom's neat, looping handwriting. Next to them was a black leather notebook and a silver USB drive taped to a piece of cardstock. I picked up the first envelope. The date was from 4 years ago. I slid the contents out. They were credit card statements, but they weren't mine. Or rather, they were. But I had never seen them. The Platinum Advantage card. Account holder, Chloe Allen. I scanned the charges. A weekend at a golf resort in scandalously expensive Scottsdale, a jewelry store purchase for $3,000, a series of charges at a high-end bistro in town where my father liked to hold court. Attached to the statement was a copy of the application. The signature at the bottom was mine, or it looked like mine, but the employment listed was vice president. Caldwell Logistics, a company that didn't exist. My hands started to shake. I opened the next envelope. More of the same. A line of credit opened at a hardware store. A personal loan for $10,000 taken out 2 years ago. Then I found the envelope labeled correspondence. Inside were printouts of emails. My mother must have guessed their passwords, or, more likely, they had been careless and left their accounts logged in on the family iPad she used for reading. The top email was from Gordon to Brielle, dated 18 months ago. Subject credit check. Dad, I need to run a check for the renovation loan. My score is a little dinged from the boat purchase. I'm going to use Chloe's info. She has that Tier 1 rating. Brielle. Is that safe? Won't she get an alert? Dad. Chloe. She never checks. She doesn't even know how to check. She trusts me implicitly. Besides, it helps the family value. Just bring me her social security card from her file. Chloe. She never checks. The words seemed to float off the paper and slap me. They didn't see me as a daughter. They didn't even see me as a person. I was a resource. I was a vein of gold they could mine whenever they needed cash. Safe in the knowledge that I was too stupid or too loyal to notice the pickaxe. I put the paper down, feeling bile rise in my throat. I picked up the USB drive. I pulled my laptop out of my bag, the new one Lena had insisted I buy that morning, so I wouldn't be using any device linked to the family cloud. I plugged in the drive. There was a single audio file. It was labeled Kitchen November 12. That was 2 months before Mom died. I pressed play. The sound of static filled the cold room, followed by the clatter of dishes. Then, my mother's voice. It was weak, breathless, the voice of a woman whose lungs were failing, but the tone was made of steel. Gordon, I saw the statement, the one from American Express. You opened another card in her name. My father's voice, booming and dismissive. Marianne, stop snooping. It is just for cash flow. I will pay it off before she ever sees it. It's just paper. You are making a mountain out of a molehill. It is fraud. Gordon, Mom wheezed. It is theft. She is your daughter. Then, a third voice. Brielle. She sounded bored. She must have been eating. I could hear the crunch of an apple. Mom, seriously, Chloe doesn't care. She loves helping. She practically lives to make us happy. If she knew, she would probably say thank you for letting her be useful. She is just the help. That is her role. She is just the help. I paused the recording. The silence of the cabin rushed back in. But it felt different now. It was no longer peaceful. It was screaming. I looked at the window. The sun was dipping below the tree line, casting long blue shadows across the snow. I felt tears running down my face. They weren't hot. Angry tears. They were cold. They were the tears of a child realizing that the monsters weren't under the bed. They were sitting at the dinner table. I wiped my face and picked up the black leather notebook. This was the centerpiece. I opened it. It was a ledger. But not of numbers. It was a ledger of crimes. My mother had spent her dying days chronicling every single betrayal. Page 1, August 14th. Gordon forged Chloe's signature on the solar panel contract. Document found in his briefcase, photographed and uploaded to encrypted server. Page 12. Brielle used Chloe's identity to co-sign her apartment lease in the city. Confronted Gordon. He said it was necessary. Copied the lease agreement. Page 40. I have moved the main assets to the trust. They do not know. If they try to blame Chloe when the debts collapse, this book proves she knew nothing. This book proves she is the victim. I ran my fingers over the handwriting. Toward the end of the book, the writing got shaky. The loops became jagged as her strength failed. But she never stopped writing. Entry. From 3 days before she died, I am so tired. But I have to finish this. They will eat her alive if I don't leave her a shield. Chloe, if you are reading this, I am sorry I couldn't stop them. I was too weak, but I can give you the weapon to stop them yourself. Do not hesitate. Strike first. I closed the book. I pressed it against my chest, curling forward until my forehead touched the cold wood of the desk. I realized then that I hadn't been alone. For the last 14 months, while I was grieving her, thinking she was gone. She had been standing right beside me, holding this shield, waiting for me to be strong enough to take it. She hadn't just given me money. She hadn't just given me a house. She had given me a fully prepared legal defense. She had anticipated that when I finally cut them off, they would turn on me. They would say I was the one who took the money. They would say I was unstable. They would try to gaslight the world the way they had gaslighted me. But she had the receipts. She had the dates. She had the recordings. I sat there for a long time as the room grew dark. The temperature dropped, but I didn't feel it. A fire had been lit inside me, fueled by the dry tinder of 30 years of being used. I reached for my phone. I dialed Lena. She answered on the first ring. "Where are you?" she asked. "I am at the cabin," I said. My voice sounded different. It was deeper, calmer. It sounded like my mother's voice on the recording. "Did you find it?" "I found everything," I said. The credit cards, the emails where they planned it, the recording of them laughing about it, and a ledger. Lena, she wrote down everything, every date, every dollar. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, I heard the soft exhale of Lena Graves. "Your mother was a force of nature," Lena said softly. "This changes the strategy. We don't just have a defense. Chloe, we have a nuclear option." "I want to use it," I said. "I want to bury them." "Not yet," Lena commanded. Her voice was sharp again, the general commanding the troops. "We have the ammunition, but we need them to walk into the line of fire, right now. They are confused. They are angry, but they still think they can bully you. They think this is a family squabble." "They sent me a text," I said. "Brielle thinks it's a misunderstanding." "Good," Lena said. "Let them think that. Let them think you are scared. Let them think you are hiding here, crying over old photos. When they come for you, and they will come, Chloe, they need to believe you are weak. That is when they will make a mistake. That is when they will admit to something on the record because they think no one is listening." I looked at the black box. The rope lay on the desk like a dead snake. "I am not crying," I told Lena, "and I am not hiding." "I know," Lena said. "You are waiting. Stay at the cabin tonight. Lock the doors. Do not answer their calls. Let their panic marinate. By tomorrow morning, the reality of their financial situation will start to hit. Gordon's cards will stop working. Brielle's car might even get flagged for repossession if we move fast enough on the fraud alert." "Okay," I said. "I will wait." "Chloe." "Yes." "Get some sleep. You're going to need your strength. The hardest part isn't finding the truth. The hardest part is watching the people you loved choke on it." I hung up the phone. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark, watching the moon rise over the ridge, illuminating the snow with a ghostly blue light. I placed the USB drive back in the box. I put the ledger in my bag. I wasn't the reliable daughter anymore. I wasn't the logistics manager. I wasn't the pillar holding up their roof. I was the demolition crew, and I had just found the blueprints to the foundation. The morning sun hitting the snow outside the cabin window should have been peaceful, but the notification on my laptop screen turned the bright light into a glare. I had expected anger. I had expected begging. I had not expected a formal legal threat delivered before I had even finished my first cup of coffee. The email in my inbox was not from my father's personal address. It was from Caldwell Associates, his business domain, and the subject line was written in aggressive, all caps bold. Notice of unauthorized interference and demand for immediate restitution. I clicked it open. My heart doing that traitorous little stutter it always did when Gordon raised his voice. Even digitally, Chloe, it has come to my attention that you have maliciously altered the login credentials for the primary residence's utility and security accounts. This constitutes a direct interference with family assets and endangers the safety of this household. Furthermore, your abrupt departure has caused significant distress to your sister and stepmother. If you do not restore access to all accounts and return to the residence to discuss a transition plan by 5 o'clock this evening, I will be forced to pursue legal action regarding your mismanagement of family funds during your tenure as household administrator. I will also be contacting your employer at Northbridge Risk and Compliance to inform them of your unstable behavior. Do not test me. I made you. I can break you. Gordon. I read it twice. The gaslighting was so potent, I could almost smell the sulfur. He was accusing me of mismanagement, me, the woman who had balanced his checkbook to the penny for a decade, and the threat to my job that was the kicker. He knew my career was the one thing I had built entirely on my own. The one thing that didn't have his name on it. He was threatening to burn it down just to get the password to the thermostat. I didn't reply. I forwarded the email to Lena Graves with a single note. Add this to the pile. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Tessa. I hesitated. Lena had told me to let them panic, but she had also said we needed them to incriminate themselves. I hit the record button on the app Lena had installed on my new phone, checked the state laws in my head, one-party consent, perfectly legal, and answered. Hello, Tessa, I said. Oh, thank God. Tessa's voice cracked, wet and thick with tears. It was a performance worthy of an Academy Award. Chloe, honey, where are you? We are so worried. Your father, he hasn't slept. He is pacing the floor. He is absolutely broken. Chloe, how could you do this to him? He loves you so much. For a second, the old programming kicked in. The guilt. I hurt them. I am the bad guy. But then I looked at the black box on the desk. The box containing the credit card statements they had hidden from me. I am safe, Tessa, I said, my voice flat. What do you want? We want you to come home, she sobbed. We can fix this. We can sit down and talk like a family. You know how your father gets when he is stressed. He didn't mean those things about the $2. He was just trying to teach you to help you. He threatened to contact my employer. Tessa, I said. Is that how he helps me? There was a pause. The sobbing stopped abruptly, like a faucet being turned off. Well, he is desperate, Chloe. Her tone shifted, becoming sharp and shrill. And honestly, you are being incredibly selfish. The security gate is stuck halfway open because the code changed, and the pool heater is off. Do you have any idea how much it costs to reheat that pool if it drops below 60 degrees? You need to give me the new master password. Right now, I have a yoga instructor coming at noon and the gate won't open. I almost laughed. There it was, the pivot. The tears were just the lubricant to get the password. I am not giving you the password. Tessa, I said. The account is in my name. I am closing it. You will have to open your own utility accounts. I suggest you call the power company. You little bitch, she hissed. The change was so fast it gave me whiplash. After everything we gave you, you lived in our guest house for free. I paid the rent with my identity, I said. Goodbye, Tessa. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline. I needed to get out of the cabin for an hour. The air in there was too thick with ghosts. I needed coffee that I didn't have to brew myself, and I needed to feel like a human being who existed in the world, not just a fugitive. I drove the rental car down into the village of Cinder Ridge. It was a small tourist trap of a town, all log cabins and overpriced antique stores. I went to the Roasted Bean, a coffee shop near the main square. I ordered a black coffee and sat in the back corner, pulling my beanie down low. I was stirring my coffee when the bell above the door jingled. I didn't look up initially, but the scent hit me before the visual. Vanilla and expensive musk. I froze. Brielle was standing at the counter. She wasn't wearing her party dress anymore. She was wearing a cashmere tracksuit that cost more than my first car, and huge sunglasses. She looked around the room, scanning faces. She knew. Of course she knew. She knew about the cabin. She knew it was the only place I would go. Her eyes locked on mine. She didn't make a scene. She didn't scream. She walked over to my table, pulled out the chair opposite me, and sat down. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her makeup was perfect. "You look like hell," she said softly. "I have had a long night," I replied, gripping my cup. "How did you find me?" "Please," she scoffed. "You are predictable. Chloe, you always run to Mom's old shrine when you are sad." Dad wanted to call the cops and report the car stolen, but I told him not to. I told him I would talk to you. "The car isn't stolen," I said. "I walked. This is a rental." "Whatever." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. She reached across the table as if to touch my hand, but I pulled back. "Look, you made your point. Okay, you blocked us. You ran away. Very dramatic. Very Gone Girl. But you need to stop now. People are going to start talking. Do you know what Mrs. Gable said? She asked if you were having a breakdown. You don't want the whole town to think you're crazy, do you? You don't want to be the unstable spinster sister." It was a masterclass in manipulation. "I am helping you. I am protecting your reputation from the rumors I probably started." "I don't care what Mrs. Gable thinks," I said. "Come on, Chloe." Brielle smiled, a tight, pained expression. "Just come back. Sign the papers to transfer the utility accounts back to Dad. Unlock the trust interface so he can pay his vendors, and we can forget this happened. I will even talk to him about the $2. I will tell him it was mean." "Okay." I looked at her. I looked at my baby sister, the girl I used to pick up from school, the girl I had helped with homework, and I saw a stranger. "Brielle," I said, my voice steady, "who is the primary borrower on the BMW loan?" The smile vanished. She blinked. Once, twice, it was a physical reboot of her facial expression. "What?" she asked, feigning confusion. "The BMW," I repeated. "The one with the red bow, the one you drove last night. Who is the borrower listed on the financing agreement?" "I don't know," she said too quickly. "Dad handled it. It was a gift." "Don't lie to me," I said, leaning forward. "I saw the papers, Brielle. I saw the signature. It is my name, and it is my credit history, and I know I didn't sign it." She went still. She looked down at her manicured fingernails, picking at a cuticle. When she looked back up, the sweetness was gone. In its place was a petulant, childish anger. "So what?" she snapped. "You have great credit. You never use it. Dad said it wouldn't matter. We just needed a co-signer to get the lower interest rate. It is literally just a piece of paper. Chloe, why are you being so stingy?" "Stingy." I stared at her. "You committed identity theft. You stole $72,000 of my credit capacity." "We didn't steal it," she hissed, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "We borrowed your score. Dad is going to make the payments. He promised. He has a liquidity issue right now because of some business thing. So he couldn't put it in his name. We did it for the family. I needed a car to get to my internship. Do you want me to be unsafe in that old Jetta?" "You forged my signature," I said. "I signed it for you," she admitted, her voice rising slightly. "Dad told me to. He said, Chloe won't mind. She is a team player. Just sign it so we can get the car out of the lot today. It was a rush. Okay. We were going to tell you eventually. You were going to tell me eventually, I repeated. Was that before or after you gave me $2 and told me to learn the value of money? Oh my God, get over the $2. She slammed her hand on the table. You are blowing this way out of proportion. Just look. Just sign a retroactive permission form. That is all we need. Dad talked to his lawyer. If you sign a paper saying you authorized it verbally, the bank stops asking questions. Just sign one paper. Chloe, be a good sister for once. Be a good sister. That was the hook. That was always the hook. I tapped the screen of my phone, ensuring the recording was still running. I am not signing anything, Brielle, I said, and I suggest you stop driving that car. Because when I report it as stolen property purchased with fraudulent funds, the police are going to pull you over. Brielle stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Her face was flushed with genuine rage now. You are ruining everything, she shouted, not caring who heard. You are selfish and jealous, and you are trying to destroy Dad because you are mad he loves me more. If you report this, I will tell everyone you are lying. I will tell them you are off your meds. I will ruin you. Chloe. She spun around and stormed out of the coffee shop, the bell jingling cheerfully behind her. I sat there for a long moment, watching the door. The recording was saved. She had admitted it. I signed it for you. Dad told me to. My phone rang again. I expected it to be Gordon, screaming, but it wasn't. The caller ID said Miles Carter. I stared at the screen. Miles was our family accountant for 20 years, a gentle, balding man who used to give me peppermint candies. He had retired abruptly 6 months ago, or so I was told. I answered. Hello, Miles? Chloe? His voice was hushed, urgent. Is this a safe line? Yes, I said. I am on a new phone. Listen to me carefully, Miles said. I heard through the grapevine that Gordon is threatening you. I still have friends at the firm. I need you to know why he is so desperate. Why? I asked. He is drowning. Chloe, the business isn't just having a liquidity issue. He has been borrowing from the client escrow accounts to pay for his personal debts. His partners found out last week. They are preparing to file a criminal complaint for embezzlement. We are talking about missing funds in excess of $2 million. The air left my lungs. $2 million? He has been robbing Peter to pay Paul for years, Miles continued. But here is the bad part. The accounts he used to funnel the money, he didn't put them in his name. He opened shell accounts. I closed my eyes. I knew what he was going to say before he said it. He put them in my name, I whispered. He listed you as the custodial administrator for the diverted funds, Miles confirmed. If this blows up, he isn't planning to go down for it. He is building a narrative that his daughter, the trusted bookkeeper, went rogue. He is going to frame you. Chloe, that is why he gave you the $2. That is why he is trying to paint you as unstable. He needs a villain to explain where the money went. I felt a coldness settle in my chest that was deeper than the winter outside. This wasn't just about a BMW. This wasn't just about a toxic family. My father was preparing to send me to prison to save himself. Thank you, Miles, I said. I need you to talk to my lawyer. I will, Miles said. Watch your back, kid. He is cornered, and he has nothing left to lose. I hung up. I looked out the window at the snow-covered street. Brielle's threats echoed in my mind. I will tell them you are off your meds. They were already planting the seeds. They were creating the character of Crazy Chloe so that when the indictment came down, everyone would nod and say, yes, we saw it coming. I stood up. I left my half-finished coffee on the table. I walked out to the rental car. I wasn't just fighting for my dignity anymore. I was fighting for my freedom. I drove back to the cabin, the tires crunching on the ice. I went straight to the desk and opened the black box again. I found the USB drive my mother had left. I remembered Lena saying we needed to wait for them to make a mistake. They had made it. Brielle had confessed to the forgery on tape, and Miles had given me the motive. I sat down at the computer. It was time to stop reacting. It was time to start the offensive. I typed a text to Lena. Brielle confessed. I have it recorded. And Miles Carter just told me about the embezzlement. Gordon is trying to frame me for $2 million. Lena's reply came instantly. Come to the office tomorrow. Bring everything. And Chloe locked the doors. Tonight will be the longest night. The darkness in the cabin was not total. It was a textured gray, illuminated by the reflection of the moon on the heavy snowdrifts outside. I sat in the corner of the study, the furthest point from the front door. Wrapped in a blanket that smelled of cedar and thyme, the wind was howling through the valley, a low, mournful moan that rattled the window panes in their frames. Every snap of a twig, every settling of the timber beams, sounded like a footstep. I was not hiding. I told myself I was fortifying. My phone lay face up on the floor beside me. The screen pulsed once, a silent heartbeat in the gloom. I picked it up. Sender Gordon. Time: 8:45 p.m. Message: if you do not come home, we will come get you. This ends tonight. It was not a request. It was a hunting cry. I didn't reply. I simply took a screenshot and uploaded it to the encrypted cloud folder Lena had set up for me earlier that day. Threat of physical coercion. I labeled it. Then, the world shifted. A beam of light sliced through the darkness of the living room. It swept across the far wall, blindingly bright, casting long, distorted shadows of the furniture against the pine paneling. It was the sweep of headlights turning into the driveway. They were here. My heart didn't race. It stopped. For a second, the biological imperative to be a daughter, to run to the door, to welcome them, to fix the problem flared up. But then I remembered the ledger. I remembered the $2. I remembered the embezzlement. I stayed seated. The sound of a car engine cut through the wind. It was a heavy, aggressive engine, my father's SUV. I heard the doors slam. 2 slams, one heavy, one light. Then, the crunch of boots on snow. Fast, angry steps. They weren't approaching a home. They were storming a bunker. The first blow to the door shook the entire cabin. Chloe. It was Gordon. His voice wasn't the smooth baritone drawl he used at dinner parties. It was a raw, guttural roar. Open this door. I know you are in there. I saw the light. I curled my knees to my chest. I had locked the deadbolt. I had engaged the secondary chain, but the wood was old. Chloe. This was Brielle. Her voice was high, pitched to a frequency of pure hysteria. Open the door. You are ruining my life. You are ruining everything. She kicked the door. I heard the dull thud of her boot against the wood. We just want to talk, Gordon screamed, pounding with his fist now. The rhythm was erratic, violent. You are my daughter, and you will listen to me. You are stealing from this family. Open up. I dialed Lena. She picked up before the first ring finished. They are here, I whispered. Are you safe? Lena's voice was ice cold, a sharp contrast to the fire outside my door. They are banging on the door. Gordon and Brielle. They are screaming. Do not open it, Lena commanded. Do not speak to them. Move away from the windows. Go to an interior room if you can. I am patching the sheriff through on the other line. We have a priority dispatch because of the restraining order application we filed this afternoon. I am in the study, I said. It has no view of the porch. Good. Keep the line open. Record everything. I tapped the speakerphone icon and set the phone down. I held my new phone the burner and hit record on the video app, pointing it at the door from the shadows. Chloe, I swear to God, Gordon yelled. I could hear the rattle of the doorknob being twisted violently. If I have to break this door down, I will. You are having a mental breakdown. You are a danger to yourself. We are here to help you. We are here to help you. The gaslighting had reached a physical crescendo. He was threatening to break down a door to save me from myself. You selfish bitch, Brielle shrieked. I can't go to my internship. The police came to the house looking for the car. They towed it. They towed my car in front of the neighbors. Open the door. So Lena had moved fast. The BMW had been seized. That explained the desperation. That explained why they had driven 2 hours on icy roads in the middle of the night. The facade wasn't just cracking. It had shattered. I am going to count to 3, Gordon bellowed. 1. I watched the door shudder in the frame. The wood groaned. 2. A heavy thud, like a shoulder ramming against the timber. 3. Another ram. Dust fell from the doorframe. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just watched the lens of my camera capture the violence of my own father trying to breach my sanctuary. And then, a new light flooded the windows. Blue, red, blue, red. The strobing lights cut through the darkness, washing the living room in a chaotic, feverish rhythm. A siren blipped short, sharp, authoritative. The pounding stopped instantly. "Sheriff's Department," a voice amplified by a loudspeaker cut through the wind. "Step away from the door. Put your hands where we can see them." I exhaled. The air left my lungs in a long, shaky shudder. I crept toward the window, peering through the slat of the blinds. 2 cruisers were parked behind my father's SUV, blocking him in. 3 officers were out, flashlights drawn, beams cutting through the falling snow. I saw my father. He had stepped back from the porch, his hands raised halfway. But his posture had changed instantly. The rage was gone. He slumped his shoulders. He looked confused, frail, harmless. "Officers," Gordon called out, his voice trembling with a fabricated relief. "Thank God you are here. My daughter, she is inside. She isn't answering. We are terrified she might have hurt herself. She has been acting so erratic lately." He was doing it. He was playing the concerned parent. He was trying to use the police to gain entry. "Step away from the porch, sir," the lead officer commanded. He didn't lower his flashlight. "But she is in there," Brielle cried, clinging to Gordon's arm. "She is having an episode. Please, you have to help us get to her." My phone buzzed. It was Lena. "The police have the file. Chloe, they know this isn't a wellness check. Go to the door. Open it only for the officer." I stood up. My legs felt heavy, like they were made of lead. I walked through the dark living room to the front door. I unlocked the deadbolt. I undid the chain. I opened the door. The cold air rushed in, biting my face. My father's eyes locked onto mine. For a split second, before he remembered his audience, the mask slipped. I saw pure, unadulterated hatred. I saw a man looking at a traitor. "Chloe!" he shouted, taking a step forward. "Oh, thank God. You're alive." "Stay back," the officer barked, stepping between us. I stood in the doorway, wrapping the blanket tighter around myself. I didn't look at Gordon. I looked straight at the deputy. "I am safe," I said, my voice clear and loud enough for the body cameras to pick up. "I am not having an episode. I am hiding from these people because they are threatening me. My lawyer has contacted your station." The deputy, a tall man with a thick mustache and eyes that had seen enough domestic disputes to know who the aggressor was, nodded. "We have the report, Ms. Allen," he said. He turned to Gordon. "Sir, you are trespassing. You need to leave. Now." "Trespassing," Gordon sputtered. "This is my house. That is my daughter." "The deed lists the Marianne Allen Trust as the owner," the deputy said flatly, "and Ms. Allen is the sole trustee. She has asked you to leave. If you do not leave, I will arrest you for harassment and trespassing." Gordon turned purple. The veins in his neck bulged. He looked from the deputy to me. He realized, perhaps for the first time in his life, that his charm had no currency here. "You are making a mistake," Gordon hissed at me. "You are destroying this family over money." "No," I said. "I am saving myself from your crimes." Brielle let out a sob. "Chloe, please. They took the car. I have nothing." "You have a ride home," I said coldly. "Take it." The deputy ushered them toward the SUV. I watched as they got in. I watched as my father slammed the door, the sound echoing through the valley. I watched as they reversed, tires spinning on the ice, and drove away in defeat. The taillights faded into the distance, 2 red eyes blinking out in the dark. The deputy walked back up the porch steps. He lowered his voice. "Ms. Allen." "Yes. You should know," he said, glancing back at his cruiser. "This wasn't just a standard call. We got a flag from the state police when we ran your father's plates. There is an active investigation regarding banking irregularities linked to that vehicle." My stomach tightened. "I know." "Good," he said. He looked at me with a grim sympathy. "Lock this door. If they come back, don't wait for them to knock. Just call 911. These things when money is involved. Family doesn't mean much. Keep yourself safe." "I will," I said. He nodded, tipped his hat, and walked back to his cruiser. I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I put the chain back on. I walked to the window and watched the police cars leave. Their lights disappeared, leaving me alone in the silence and the dark. I looked down at the porch. The snow was falling heavily again. The footprints, my father's heavy boot prints. Brielle's heel marks were already filling in. The white powder was erasing them, smoothing over the violence of their visit. It felt symbolic. The tie was cut. They had come to drag me back, and they had been repelled by the very law they thought they were above. I didn't go back to sleep. I couldn't. I went to the kitchen and made a pot of strong coffee. Then, I went back to the study. I turned on the desk lamp. A pool of warm yellow light illuminated the battlefield. I opened the black box. I took out the ledger. I took out the USB drive. I took out the files Lena had given me. I began to organize. I cleared a space on the floor. I created piles. Pile 1. The BMW, the loan documents, the forged signature, the police report number Lena had texted me regarding the seizure. Pile 2. The embezzlement, the notes from Miles Carter, the list of shell accounts my mother had identified in her ledger. Pile 3. The identity theft, the credit card statements, the emails between Gordon and Brielle discussing my credit score like it was a communal harvest. Pile 4. The tax fraud. The returns my mother had flagged where Gordon had claimed deductions for expenses that were clearly personal. I worked through the night. The wind howled outside, but inside, there was only the sound of paper shuffling and the scratching of my pen as I annotated the files. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't shaking. I felt a strange, cold precision taking over my mind. I had spent my entire life trying to be good enough for them. I had spent 34 years trying to earn a love that they were incapable of giving. I had thought that if I just worked harder, if I was just more reliable, they would finally see me. But they had seen me. They saw me as a scapegoat. They saw me as a signatory. I picked up the envelope containing the $2. I looked at it one last time. Gordon had told me to learn the value of $1. I looked at the piles of evidence around me. These papers represented millions of dollars. They represented felonies. They represented prison time. The climax of this story wasn't going to be a tearful reunion. It wasn't going to be them apologizing and me forgiving them. That was a fantasy. The reality was right here on the floor. The climax was going to be an indictment. I picked up a marker and wrote on the cover of a fresh file folder, "The People vs. Gordon Caldwell." I placed the first document inside. The sun began to rise over Cinder Ridge, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. I stood up, my back stiff, my eyes burning, but my spirit unbreakable. They had knocked on my door to threaten me. They had no idea that they had just knocked on the door of the prosecutor. The courier arrived at Lena's office at 9 o'clock in the morning, shaking snow off his jacket. He handed over a thick manila envelope sealed with the red tape of an urgent legal motion. Lena signed for it without looking up from her coffee. She knew what it was. We both did. I was sitting in the corner chair, the same spot where I had learned I owned the house just 2 days ago. I felt older now. The adrenaline from the standoff at the cabin had faded, replaced by a dull, throbbing hypervigilance. Lena sliced the envelope open with a silver letter opener. She scanned the first page, her expression unreadable. Then, she slid it across the desk to me. "They aren't suing for the money, Chloe," she said, her voice devoid of surprise. "They are suing for you." I looked at the document. The header read, "Emergency petition for conservatorship and appointment of guardian ad litem." Beneath it, in dense legal phrasing, was the narrative my father had constructed. It claimed that I, Chloe Allen, had suffered a sudden and severe psychotic break. It cited my erratic abandonment of the family home, my delusional seizure of family assets, and my refusal to communicate with loved ones as evidence of my mental incapacity. They were trying to Britney Spears me. They want a judge to declare me incompetent, I said, the words feeling heavy in my mouth. If I am incompetent, I can't be a trustee, and if I'm not a trustee, then Gordon gets control of the trust back, Lena finished. He becomes your legal guardian. He gets the house, he gets the accounts, and most importantly, he gets to control the narrative of the investigation. It was the dirtiest card in the deck, and they had played it within 24 hours of being kicked off my porch. My phone buzzed. It had been buzzing all morning. It wasn't them, I still had them blocked, but it was everyone else. My Aunt Sarah, my cousin Mike, even a neighbor I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. I opened a message from Aunt Sarah. Chloe, honey, Brielle told us what happened. We are so worried. Please don't push your family away. We know you're not well. Let your father help you. I felt a wave of nausea. Brielle had been busy. She wasn't just crying to her friends. She was working the family tree. She was planting the seeds of my insanity so that when the legal hammer came down, everyone would nod and say, yes, poor Chloe. She always was a bit fragile. They are isolating me, I said, showing Lena the text. They are telling everyone I'm crazy. Of course they are, Lena said. Social isolation creates dependency. If no one believes you, you have nowhere to go but back to them. It is classic textbook abuse. She stood up and walked to the wall of filing cabinets. She unlocked a drawer I hadn't seen her open yet. Gordon thinks this is a chess match, Lena said, pulling out a file. But he forgot that he is playing against a woman who has been dead for 14 months, and Marianne Allen did not play games. She placed the file on the desk. It was labeled Medical Certification, Marianne Allen. Your father's lawyer is going to argue that your mother was not of sound mind when she signed the trust over to you, Lena explained. He will claim she was medicated, confused, and coerced by you. That is the standard attack. She flipped the file open. However, Lena continued, tapping a document with a blue seal, your mother anticipated this. On the day she signed the final trust amendment, the one that gives you total control, she had Dr. Aris perform a full cognitive evaluation. We have a signed affidavit from a neurologist stating that Marianne Allen was fully oriented, lucid, and acting under her own volition. We also have a video deposition of her stating her intent. I looked at the paper. My mother had thought of everything. She had known they would try to say she was crazy, just like they were now saying I was crazy. That protects the trust, I said, but it doesn't stop them from coming after me. If they convince a judge I am unstable now, they can suspend my powers. Lena smiled. It was a terrifying smile. That brings us to the second item. She reached into her safe again. This time, she pulled out a small, padded envelope. It had my name on it, written in my mother's hand. But below my name, she had written, open only in the event of a competency challenge. I took the envelope. My hands were shaking again. She knew, I whispered. She knew they would do this to me. She didn't just know. Chloe, she heard them planning it. I tore the seal. Inside was a single USB drive, painted red. Plug it in, Lena commanded. I inserted the drive into my laptop. There was one file, audio only, dated 2 years ago. I pressed play. The audio was crisp. It sounded like it had been recorded in the living room of the main house. I heard the clinking of ice in a glass. I am telling you, Dad, it's risky, Brielle's voice said. She sounded younger, less polished. If we put the shell accounts in her name, and the IRS audits us, she goes to jail. She won't go to jail, Gordon's voice replied. He sounded calm, arrogant. Because if that happens, we play the mental health card. We say Chloe has been overwhelmed. We say she was confused. We get Dr. Evans to write a note saying she has been suffering from stress-induced dissociation. If she is unstable, she can't be held criminally liable for the accounting errors. And since I am her father, I take custody of the mess. pay a fine, and we look like saints for taking care of our troubled daughter." There was a pause on the recording. Then Brielle laughed. "You are evil, Dad." "I am pragmatic," Gordon said. "Chloe is the safety net. That is her purpose. She absorbs the impact so we don't have to." The recording ended. I sat in the silence of the law office, feeling the blood turn to ice in my veins. They hadn't just decided to call me crazy yesterday. This wasn't a reaction to me leaving. This was the plan all along. For 2 years, my father had been keeping the insanity defense in his back pocket, waiting for the day he needed to sacrifice me to the IRS. I wasn't a daughter. I was a human shield. "He built a trapdoor under me," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "He was going to send me to a psych ward to stay out of prison." "Yes," Lena said softly, "and that recording is the nail in his coffin. It proves conspiracy, it proves malice, and it proves that his petition for conservatorship is fraudulent." My phone rang. It was Miles Carter. I looked at Lena. She nodded. "Answer it on speaker." "Miles," I said. "It's happening." "Chloe," Miles said, his voice breathless. "I just got a call from the compliance officer at the firm. Gordon's partners formally filed the fraud report this morning. The forensic accountants are already pulling the servers. They found the discrepancies. $2 million, give or take. And Chloe?" "I know," I said. "It is in my name." "Most of it," Miles confirmed. "He used your employee ID from the fake logistics role he created for you to authorize the transfers. On paper, it looks like you moved the money. If the feds see that before they see the rest of the evidence," Lena interrupted, her voice sharp, "they will come for Chloe first." "Exactly," Miles said. "Gordon knows the clock is ticking. He needs that conservatorship order immediately so he can legally confess on her behalf and seal the records before she can speak. He is trying to beat the FBI to the punch." "Thank you, Miles," Lena said. "We are moving now." She hung up the phone. The air in the room changed. It wasn't a waiting room anymore. It was a war room. "We have to move fast," Lena said, standing up and smoothing her skirt. "We can't wait for a court date. If the investigation gains momentum, the authorities might freeze everything, including your ability to defend yourself. We need Gordon to withdraw the petition and admit to the fraud before the subpoena lands." "How?" I asked. "He thinks he is winning. He thinks I am hiding in the woods." "We invite him here," Lena said. "We tell him you are ready to talk. We tell him you are distressed and want to settle. He will think you are surrendering. He will think his pressure campaign worked. And when he gets here, we lock the door," Lena said, "and we play the recording." I looked at the red USB drive. "Am I destroying my family?" I asked. The question slipped out before I could stop it. It was the last vestige of the person I used to be, the Chloe who wanted to be good, who wanted to be loved. "If I do this, if I hand this over, he goes to prison. Brielle might go to prison. I am effectively orphaning myself." Lena walked around the desk. She didn't hug me. She wasn't that kind of lawyer. But she placed a hand on my shoulder, heavy and grounding. "Chloe," she said, "you aren't destroying the family. Gordon destroyed it the moment he decided you were expendable. He didn't plant a tree. He planted a landmine. All you are doing is stepping off the trigger." I thought about the $2. I thought about the BMW with the red bow. I thought about Brielle's laugh on the tape. "You are evil, Dad." "Consequences are not revenge," I whispered, repeating my mother's mantra. "Exactly," Lena said. "Now, are you ready to send the invitation?" I nodded. Lena drafted the email. It was short, professional, and deceptive. To Gordon Caldwell, from Graves Associates, Subject Settlement Conference. "Ms. Allen is overwhelmed by the recent legal filings. She wishes to resolve this matter privately and is prepared to discuss the transfer of administrative access. Please attend a meeting at our offices at 4 o'clock today. Bring counsel if you wish. Though Ms. Allen requests a family discussion first." It was the perfect bait. It appealed to his ego. It confirmed his narrative that I was weak, overwhelmed, and it offered him exactly what he wanted: the keys to the kingdom. He replied in 3 minutes. We will be there. I am glad Chloe has come to her senses. I spent the next 4 hours preparing. Lena and I organized the evidence into a presentation. We didn't just have piles anymore. We had a timeline. We had a narrative that was tighter and more damning than anything Gordon could invent. I went to the bathroom to wash my face. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked tired. Her skin was pale, her eyes shadowed. But there was something else in her expression, a hardness, a clarity. I wasn't the girl who signed papers in the kitchen anymore. I wasn't the girl who accepted $2. At 3:55, the intercom buzzed. Mr. Caldwell, Mrs. Caldwell, and Ms. Brielle Caldwell are here, the receptionist announced. Send them to the main conference room, Lena said. She turned to me. Ready? No, I said honestly. But let's do it anyway. We walked down the hall. The conference room was at the end. A glass-walled box that looked out over the city. It was snowing again. I walked in. Gordon was sitting at the head of the table. Naturally, he was wearing his best suit, the navy one with the pinstripes. He looked confident, almost bored. Tessa was next to him, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. Brielle was scrolling on her phone, looking annoyed to be there. When I entered, Gordon didn't stand up. He just nodded, a benevolent monarch granting an audience to a rebellious subject. Chloe, he said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. You look terrible, but I'm glad you decided to stop this charade before it got out of hand. I didn't sit down. I stood at the opposite end of the table. Lena stood beside me, placing a single laptop on the polished wood. I didn't come here to stop the charade. Dad, I said. My voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. I came here to end it. Gordon's smile faltered. What is that supposed to mean? Sit down. Sign the papers. We have a doctor coming at 6 to evaluate you. There will be no doctor, Lena said, stepping forward. And there will be no conservatorship. Excuse me. Gordon stood up, his face reddening. Who do you think you are? I am her father. She is mentally unstable. She ran away. I didn't run away, I said. I woke up. I reached over and pressed the spacebar on the laptop. The voice filled the room. If we put the shell accounts in her name, she goes to jail. She won't go to jail. We play the mental health card. The color drained from Gordon's face so fast it looked like a physical injury. He slumped back into his chair as if his strings had been cut. Brielle stopped scrolling. She looked up, her mouth opening in a silent "oh" of horror as she heard her own laugh echo through the room. You are evil, Dad, the recording ended. The silence that followed was colder than the cabin, heavier than the snow, and sharper than any knife. That, Lena said, her voice slicing through the air, is Exhibit A in the federal fraud case we are prepared to file in exactly 1 hour. Gordon looked at me. The arrogance was gone. The mask was gone. There was only fear, naked, trembling fear. Chloe, he rasped, you can't. I'm your father. I know, I said. That's the only reason I'm giving you 60 minutes to confess before I give this to the FBI. The conference room was a glass box suspended over the gray, slush-covered city, but the temperature inside felt significantly lower than the winter storm raging outside. My father, Gordon, had entered the room first, strutting past the receptionist with the kind of aggressive confidence that usually signaled he was terrified. He threw his cashmere coat onto an empty chair as if he were claiming territory. Behind him trailed Tessa, whose eyes were darting around the room like a trapped animal, and Brielle, who refused to look at me. Bringing up the rear was a man I didn't know, a man in an expensive suit with a shiny, bald head and a briefcase that looked like it cost more than my first car. This was their lawyer. Gordon sat at the head of the table. He didn't ask if he could. He just took the seat. It was a power move, a reflex muscle memory from a lifetime of being the loudest voice in the room. Brielle sat to his right, staring at me with a look of pure, distilled hatred. In her eyes, I wasn't the victim. I was the thief who had stolen her comfort. I sat at the opposite end, next to Lena. I kept my hands folded on the table, They were steady. "Let's make this quick," Gordon announced, checking his watch. "My attorney, Mr. Sterling, has advised me that this entire meeting is a courtesy on my part. We are here to accept your apology and your resignation as trustee. If you sign the papers today, we might forgive the embarrassment you caused with the police last night." Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. "Ms. Graves," he said, nodding to Lena, "my client asserts that your client, Ms. Allen, has engaged in elder abuse by locking Mr. Caldwell out of his own assets and has committed theft of intellectual property by seizing business records. We have a motion prepared for an emergency injunction." Lena didn't blink. She didn't even look at Mr. Sterling. She looked directly at Gordon. "Mr. Caldwell," Lena said, her voice smooth and dangerous, "you are not here to accept an apology. You are here because if you leave this room without hearing what we have to say, the next conversation you have will be with a federal prosecutor." "You're bluffing," Gordon sneered. "You have a recording of a private conversation. It's inadmissible. It was taken out of context. I was venting about my daughter's mental health. That isn't a crime." "We aren't talking about the recording right now," Lena said. She reached into her file stack. "We are talking about the BMW." She slid a single piece of paper across the polished mahogany table. It spun perfectly, stopping right in front of Gordon. "This," Lena said, "is the loan application for the 2024 BMW X5 currently sitting in the police impound lot. Please look at the line labeled co-borrower." Gordon didn't look down. He kept his eyes fixed on me. "I don't need to look at it. I handled the financing. Chloe agreed to help her sister." "I never agreed," I said. My voice was quiet, but in the acoustic perfection of the room, it carried like a bell. "I never signed that document, Dad." "You gave verbal consent," Brielle shouted. She slammed her hand on the table. "You told me at dinner 2 months ago that you wanted to help me get a safe car. You said, 'I'll do whatever it takes.' That is consent." "I said I would help you look for a car within your budget." I corrected her. "I did not say I would leverage $72,000 of debt in my name." "It's a technicality." Gordon waved his hand dismissively. "I signed on her behalf as her power of attorney." Lena smiled. It was the smile of a predator who had just watched prey walk into a trap. "You do not have power of attorney, Mr. Caldwell," Lena said. "You never have. And even if you did, tracing a signature to make it look like Chloe's original hand isn't acting as an agent, it is forgery. It's not forgery if the intent is family benefit." Tessa piped up. Her voice was shrill, desperate. "We are a family. What is hers is ours. That is how it works." "That is communism, Tessa," Lena said dryly. "Not banking law." Lena reached into the file again. "But let's address the intent," she said. "You claim Chloe was a willing participant. You claim she knew Mr. Sterling. I assume your client has informed you that Chloe was fully aware of these financial maneuvers." Mr. Sterling adjusted his tie, looking slightly uncomfortable. "My client maintains that Ms. Allen was the administrator of these accounts." "Interesting," Lena said. She pulled out a sheet of paper sealed in a plastic protector. It was a printout of an email. Because on November 12th of last year, at 10:45 in the morning, Mr. Caldwell sent this email to Brielle Caldwell. Lena read aloud, her voice devoid of emotion. "Subject credit check. Body. I'm going to use Chloe's info. She has that Tier 1 rating." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. And the reply from Brielle. "Is that safe? Won't she get an alert?" I watched Brielle. She shrank into her chair, pulling her cashmere cardigan tighter around her body. Lena finished reading. And the response from Mr. Gordon Caldwell. "Chloe. She never checks. She doesn't even know how to check. She trusts me implicitly. Besides, it helps the family value." Lena looked up. "She never checks. Hardly the words of a man working with a willing partner. Are they—" Gordon went pale. He reached for the paper. but Mr. Sterling put a hand on his arm to stop him. The lawyer was reading the document upside down, and I saw the moment he realized his client had lied to him. "This is," Gordon stammered. "This is private correspondence. You hacked my email." "We didn't hack anything," I said. "Mom printed it. She left it for me, in the box you didn't know existed." "Marianne," Gordon spat the name like a curse. "She was vindictive. She was sick in the head. Just like you." "She was meticulous," Lena corrected. "And she was right." Brielle looked at Tessa. "Mom, you said they wouldn't find out. You said Dad fixed it." Tessa's face crumbled. "I didn't know he sent an email. Brielle, I just thought Gordon. You said it was handled. You said Chloe wouldn't mind." "Shut up, Tessa," Gordon barked. "So you knew," I looked at my stepmother. "You knew they were stealing my identity, and you said nothing." "We weren't stealing," Tessa cried, tears streaming down her face, ruining her mascara. "We were borrowing. We were going to pay it back when the market turned. We just needed your credit score for a few months. Why do you have to be so selfish? You have a good job. You have no expenses. Why couldn't you just let us use it?" "Admission of guilt," Lena murmured, glancing at the court reporter she had hired to transcribe the meeting. "Thank you, Mrs. Caldwell." Gordon stood up. The chair scraped violently against the floor. He leaned over the table, planting his knuckles on the wood. He loomed over me, trying to summon the shadow that had scared me for 30 years. "You listen to me," he hissed. "You think you're clever. You think this little paper trail scares me. I made you, Chloe, and I can unmake you." "Is that a threat?" Lena asked calmly. "It's a promise," Gordon sneered. "I know people at Northbridge Risk and Compliance. I play golf with your CEO, Jonathan. What do you think happens when I call him tomorrow morning? What do you think happens when I tell him that his senior compliance officer is currently under investigation for embezzlement? Because that is exactly what I'm going to tell him. I will tell him you stole family funds. I will paint you as a thief and a liar. You will be fired before lunch." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Northbridge was my sanctuary. It was the one place where I was respected for my mind, not my utility. "You would destroy my career," I said softly, "just to cover your own crimes." "I will burn your life to the ground if you don't unlock those accounts," Gordon said. "I will make you toxic. No one in this industry will ever hire you again." Mr. Sterling looked down at his notepad, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. I looked at my father. I looked at the man who had bought me ice cream once when I was 6, and who was now threatening to starve me to save his own skin. "You can call Jonathan," I said. "In fact, I encourage you to—" Gordon blinked. "What?" "I already called him," I said. "This morning. I reported a potential conflict of interest involving a family member. I sent him the forensic accounting report Miles Carter prepared regarding the embezzlement of your business partners. Jonathan thanked me for my transparency. He put me on paid administrative leave to handle my legal affairs with the full support of the company legal team." Gordon's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You told him—" "I am a compliance officer, Dad." I said, "My job is to report fraud, even when it's yours." "You ungrateful little—" Gordon lunged forward, but he caught himself. He took a deep breath, straightening his tie. "Fine. You want to play hardball, fine. Keep your job. But you can't keep the house. You can't keep the money. That trust is invalid. And I am going to tie you up in court for 10 years until you are bankrupt." "Mr. Caldwell?" Lena interrupted. She held up one final document. It was a single sheet of heavy bond paper with the logo of First National Bank at the top. "Before you threaten expensive litigation," Lena said, "you should probably know you're standing with the financial institutions." She placed the letter on the table. "This was faxed to my office 20 minutes ago. It is a formal notice from the bank's fraud department. Due to the suspicious activity detected specifically, the unauthorized attempts to access trust funds, and the discrepancies in the loan applications, First National has frozen all accounts linked to your Social Security number, not just the trust, your personal accounts, your business operating accounts, your credit cards. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the HVAC system. "What?" Gordon whispered. "You have no access," Lena said. "You have no liquidity. You have no credit. As of this moment, Mr. Caldwell, you are insolvent." Tessa gasped. "Gordon? What does she mean?" "My card was declined at Starbucks this morning. I thought it was a chip error." "It wasn't an error," I said. "It was the system working." Gordon looked at the letter. He looked at the bold red stamp that said, "Account frozen." For the first time, I saw the reality hit him. He wasn't fighting me anymore. He was fighting an institution. He was fighting a bank. And banks do not care about gaslighting. Banks do not care about tears. Banks care about math. And the math was against him. "You did this," Gordon whispered. He looked at me with eyes that were hollow, stripping away the father and leaving only the desperate, cornered man. "You did this to your own blood." "No," I said. "You did this when you signed my name." Gordon grabbed the letter. He crumpled it in his fist. "Come on," he barked at Tessa and Brielle. "We are leaving." "But Gordon," Tessa sobbed. "What are we going to do? The mortgage is due on Tuesday." "I said move," Gordon shouted. He turned to look at me one last time. His face was a mask of twisted fury. "You think you have won," he spat. "But you haven't seen anything yet. Tonight I am going to make you regret the day you were born." He stormed out of the room. Mr. Sterling stood up, closed his briefcase, and looked at Lena. "I will be advising my client to seek a plea deal." Mr. Sterling said quietly, "If he listens." "He won't," Lena said. "Good luck, Ms. Allen," the lawyer said to me, and then he followed the wreckage of my family out the door. I sat there in the silence. My heart was pounding against my ribs, but my hands were still steady. Lena looked at me. "He threatened you again. Tonight, I will make you regret it." "I know," I said. "We need to call the police again." Lena said, "He is volatile." "Let him come," I said. I looked at the pile of evidence. I looked at the empty chairs where my family had sat. "I have saved everything. I have recorded everything. Let him come." I stood up and walked to the window. The snow was falling harder now, blanketing the city in white. Somewhere down there, my father was getting into his car, realizing he couldn't buy gas because his card was frozen. He wanted a war. He didn't realize he had already lost the battle. The only thing left was the surrender. The city lights of the financial district were beginning to blur through the sleet that pelted the windows of Graves Associates. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. The earlier meeting had dispersed, but Lena and I had not left. We were sitting in her office, eating takeout containers of pad thai that had long since gone cold, waiting. Lena had told me that desperate men make mistakes, and Gordon Caldwell was the most desperate man I knew. We did not have to wait long. At 8:45, the private line on Lena's desk rang. It was a sharp, intrusive sound in the quiet office. Lena hit the speaker button immediately. "This is Graves," she said. "Ms. Graves, this is the fraud monitoring desk at First National again," the voice on the other end said. It was the same agent from before, but his voice was tighter now, urgent. "We just flagged a priority alert. An individual identifying himself as Gordon Caldwell is currently at the ATM branch on 4th and Main. He is attempting to bypass the freeze on the business operating account using an old emergency medical override code. He is claiming his daughter is in critical condition and he needs cash for surgery." I felt a cold hollowness expand in my chest. He wasn't just stealing. He was using my imaginary death to do it. Even in his downfall, I was just a prop for his narrative. "He is lying," Lena said, her voice deadly calm. "His daughter is sitting right next to me. Deny the transaction. And flag the location for the authorities. Already done, ma'am. We have notified the precinct." The call ended. Lena looked at me. "That is the final nail. Chloe, attempting to bypass a federal freeze using a fraudulent medical emergency that is a felony in real time." Before I could respond, My own phone lit up. It wasn't a blocked number. It was an unknown number, likely a burner or a borrowed phone. I answered it. Chloe. The voice was unrecognizable at first because I had never heard it stripped of its arrogance. It was high, trembling, and hyperventilating. It was Brielle. Chloe, please pick up. Please. I am in the car with Mom. Dad is losing it. He is screaming at the ATM machine. He is hitting the screen. I know, I said. The bank just called us. Chloe, listen to me, Brielle sobbed. I didn't know about the shell accounts. I swear, I just wanted the car. I didn't know he was laundering money through my name, too. Miles Carter called Mom. He said I could go to federal prison. He said I am a co-conspirator. For the first time in 24 years, the Princess of Briar Glen sounded like a terrified child. The BMW, the red bow, the applause. It was all ash now. You signed the papers. Brielle, I said. Your name is on the lease. Your name is on the loans. You are a co-conspirator. I don't want to go to jail, she wailed. I am 24. I can't go to jail. Chloe, please, you have to help me. I will do anything. I will sign anything. Just don't let them take me. I looked at Lena. She was writing something on a legal pad. She turned it around so I could see. The deal complete severance. Bring Tessa, I said to Brielle. Leave Dad there. Get a taxi. Come to the office. Right now. If you want to save yourself, you have 20 minutes. I hung up. What are we doing? I asked Lena. We are performing a surgical amputation, Lena said. We are going to offer Brielle and Tessa a lifeboat. If they sign a full waiver of claims to the trust, a permanent non-disclosure agreement, and a no-contact order, we agree to withhold the specific file regarding their complicity in the tax fraud from the initial police report. We let the FBI find it on their own later. It buys them time. It buys you freedom. And Dad? Dad gets nothing, Lena said. Dad gets the consequences. 30 minutes later, the elevator doors opened. Brielle and Tessa walked in. They looked like refugees from a high society shipwreck. Tessa's mascara was running down her face in black rivers. Brielle was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. We didn't go to the conference room this time. We stayed in Lena's office. It was smaller, more intimate, more final. Sit, Lena commanded. They sat. They didn't argue. The fight had left them. Here is the reality, Lena began, placing a document in front of them. The investigation into the BMW purchase revealed something interesting. The VIN number of that car is tied to a bulk purchase agreement used by one of Gordon's shell companies. That car isn't just a vehicle. It is physical evidence of money laundering. You were driving a felony. Brielle. Brielle let out a small, strangled noise. However, Lena continued, Chloe is willing to offer you a level of mercy you do not deserve. This is a binding settlement. You agree that the trust belongs to Chloe. You agree that the house belongs to Chloe. You agree to never contact her again. In exchange, Chloe will not press charges against you personally for the identity theft regarding the car loan. What about Gordon? Tessa whispered. Gordon is not part of this deal, I said. Gordon is on his own. Tessa looked at the paper. Then she looked at me. He is my husband. Chloe, he is your father. He is a criminal who tried to frame me, I said. And he is a criminal who used you. Tessa, do you think he put those accounts in my name to protect you? He put them in my name, so that when the ship sank, I would drown and he could swim away with you. But the ship is sinking, and there are no lifeboats left for him. Tessa picked up the pen. Her hand trembled, but she signed. Then she pushed the paper to Brielle. Brielle looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but there was a dawning realization in them. She looked at the sister she had mocked, the sister she had told to leave, the sister she had given $2 to. You really don't need us. Do you? Brielle whispered. I always thought you were the weak one. I thought you needed us to give you a purpose. My purpose was never to serve you, I said. I just didn't realize it until I saw the red bow. Brielle signed. The scratch of the pen against the paper sounded like a chain breaking. Go, I said. Wait. The shout came from the hallway. The door to the outer office flew open. Gordon Caldwell stood there. He was disheveled. His tie was crooked. His face was a map of manic desperation. He had somehow gotten past the night security. Or perhaps he had just bullied his way up one last time. Don't you sign that, Gordon roared, lunging toward the desk. Tessa put the pen down. She is manipulating you. We already signed, Gordon, Tessa said, standing up and backing away from him. It's over. It's not over until I say it's over. Gordon slammed his fist onto Lena's desk, scattering papers. He turned on me. His eyes were wild. You think you can cut me out? I built this family. I own you. You own nothing, Lena said. Standing up, she didn't look afraid. She looked ready. Security has been called, Mr. Caldwell. I don't care about security, Gordon sneered. He reached into his coat pocket. For a terrifying second, I thought he had a gun, but he pulled out a folded piece of paper. I have a statement here from Dr. Evans. He is willing to testify that you have a history of paranoia. I will drag you through every court in this state. I will make you spend every dime of that trust defending your sanity. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the final piece of the puzzle, the one item I had kept in reserve, the black USB drive from the bottom of my mother's box. You can call Dr. Evans, I said, my voice steady. But before you do, you should hear this. I plugged the drive into Lena's computer. I turned the volume up to the maximum. This was recorded 3 years ago, I said. In the library? You thought Mom was asleep upstairs. She wasn't. I pressed play. The sound of whiskey being poured. The strike of a match. It's a Ponzi scheme. Gordon, a man's voice said. It was Miles Carter, sounding younger, pleading. You can't pay the investors back. If this breaks, you are looking at 20 years. Then, my father's voice, clear, calculating, cold. It won't break, Miles. And if it does, it won't be me. I've been setting up the fall guy for years. Chloe, she signs everything I put in front of her. She is the perfect patsy. I have the accounts linked to her social. I have the login IPs routed through her laptop. When the time comes, I act shocked. I say my daughter went rogue. I cry on the stand. The jury will believe the grieving father over the spinster accountant. I will walk away clean. Miles, I always do. The recording stopped. The silence in the room was absolute. Tessa covered her mouth with her hand, making a sound like a wounded animal. Brielle stared at her father as if he were a monster she had never seen before. Gordon stood frozen. His face went gray. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at the air, seeing the prison bars forming around him. You, he whispered. She recorded everything, I said. She knew you were going to sacrifice me, and she made sure that if you tried, you would be the one to burn. Gordon made a guttural, animalistic growl. He didn't think. He reacted. He lunged across the desk, his hands clawing for the laptop, for the drive, for me. Give it to me, he screamed. You ungrateful bitch, give it to me. I didn't move. I didn't flinch, because before he could reach me, the door burst open. 2 uniformed officers and the building security guard swarmed the room. Get on the ground, the officer shouted. Get on the ground now. Gordon was tackled. He hit the floor with a heavy thud. The wind knocked out of him. He thrashed, screaming obscenities, screaming my name, screaming that it was all a mistake. I watched from my chair. I watched as they pulled his arms behind his back. I watched the silver handcuffs click shut. It was the same sound as the key turning in the lock of the cabin door. Click. They hauled him up. He was panting, his hair falling over his eyes, his suit jacket torn at the shoulder. He looked at me. There was no love in his eyes. Only ruin. I gave you everything, he spat. I gave you a life. I stood up. I walked around the desk until I was standing 2 feet away from him. I looked him in the eye. No. Dad, I said, You gave me a job. You gave me a debt. And you gave me a $2 bill to tell me what I was worth to you. I leaned in closer. I didn't take anything from you tonight. I didn't take your money. I didn't take your house. I just stopped letting you take from me. That is the difference. Take him away, Lena said. The officers dragged him out. His shouts echoed down the hallway. Chloe, Chloe! Until the elevator doors chimed and cut him off. The room fell silent. Tessa and Brielle were still sitting there, frozen. You should go, I said to them. The police will want statements. They stood up. They didn't look at me. They walked out of the office, small and defeated, into a world where they would have to learn, for the first time, how to survive without a host. I was alone with Lena. She closed the laptop. She pulled out the USB drive and handed it to me. It is done, she said. The protection order is active. The files are with the FBI. The trust is locked. It's done, I repeated. I grabbed my coat. Where are you going? Lena asked. I'm going to get a hotel, I said. And then I'm going to look for an apartment, one that I pay for, one that has only my name on the lease. Chloe, Lena said. She smiled, and this time, it was a genuine, warm smile. Your mother would have been very proud. I know, I said. She was the one who won. I walked out of the office. I took the elevator down to the lobby and pushed through the revolving doors. The night air hit me. It was freezing, bitter, and sharp. Snow was falling in thick, quiet flakes, covering the gray slush of the city, making everything look clean and new. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I opened my contacts. I scrolled down to the bottom. Gordon Caldwell. Blocked. Tessa Caldwell. Blocked. Brielle Caldwell. Blocked. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, I turned the phone off. I put it back in my pocket. I looked up at the sky, letting the snowflakes melt on my face. I didn't know where I was going next. I didn't know what I would do tomorrow. But for the first time in my life, the path ahead didn't have a red bow on it. It didn't have strings attached. It was just an open road, covered in fresh snow, waiting for my footprints. I started walking. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I poured a lot of emotion into Chloe's journey, and I hope you felt every moment of her victory. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from a snowy town like Briar Glen or somewhere sunny? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed seeing justice served, please make sure to subscribe to the Maya Revenge Stories channel. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who need to be reminded of their own worth. See you in the next story.